Is proper power about to pump Bitcoin again? We are up quite a little bit today, so we'll dive into that. What I will try to do is play the FOMC meeting, which is going live in a couple of minutes here, probably about 6 minutes, so we'll get ready for that. While we are waiting for that, let's just jump into the numbers. We are at block height 821,043, local time 5:24 a.m. Look at this. Bitcoin is up 42,310, sats per dollar 2,363. Are we going to hold here, or are we just going to play around for a while, which we have been doing? Is it up, down, or sideways? We can dive into that. We'll skip this one here. James Seifert works for Bloomberg. I've got a couple of things to bring up from James. Risk assets across the board spiked pretty hard on this data, including Bitcoin.
The commission and the staff. And the commission
this lady, we won't play it because he doesn't say anything. But in regards to this video, this journalist here is trying to get some wording out of Gary Gensler in regards to what they think about crypto. And he just talks around the point. He says absolutely nothing there. So goes without saying, they don't want to be too pro and they don't want to be against it. Obviously, we've seen what the sinister Elizabeth Warren is doing here. We are on market watch at the moment. Let me just readjust this camera for a sec. Hopefully that's a little bit better. There we go. BlackRock modifies the structure of its spot Bitcoin ETF to allow authorized participants, mainly Wall Street banks. This is pretty interesting, actually, to create new shares in the fund with cash, allowing them an exposure to Bitcoin even without a license to own crypto directly. Same one there. FOMO 21, if you want to be able to represent Bitcoin close, FOMO 21, 10% off. You can use code G'daySats to keep away from the dirty fiat. We are going to play this in the background if they do go live on time. We'll see how we go and we'll try to get the most amount of information out there. Now, in regards to Elizabeth Warren, Preston Pish is trolling the hard. This is definitely the best reply I've seen to Elizabeth Warren recently, or as of yet. Elizabeth Warren, I got my degree from a state school that costs $50 a semester. That opportunity just isn't available today, and tens of millions of Americans are getting crushed by student debt. The Biden administration should use all its tools to provide relief to as many Americans as possible. And yet you're doing everything you can to prevent fixed, unsaleable money that no government can manipulate. Bitcoin, you're either dense, insanely corrupt, or both. Definitely both there for me, in my opinion. Steve Wozniak, co-founder of Apple. This is a little bit of fun, but hear his thoughts on Bitcoin while we are waiting for the FOMC. If you can smash the like button, get this out. We will try get that FOMC meeting live for you today.
The number of people getting ripped off on crypto and NFTs is just outrageous. Now, Bitcoin is safe because it's the big elephant on the block. It's stable. So I don't invest.
You don't invest?
I have never invested in stock in my life. I've never used Apple stock app on the iPhone.
This is awesome. He's never used Apple stock. I just want to shout out to bitcoinnews.com for allowing me to repurpose their content here and to be able to play it for everyone.
You know, I don't want that to affect my life, so I never invested in stocks. Bitcoin, I bought a bunch of Bitcoin at the start to say, how do you play with this new thing? How do you buy something online? And I conquered that. And how do you buy things in other countries? And how would you even pay for like a donut in another country? Mm-hmm. How can you find an ATM that works on your Bitcoin? And I wanted to experiment and learn it all. And then Bitcoin went way up. Well, I got scared and I sold all my Bitcoin except one Bitcoin. That's not.
Just put a thumbs up if you've been in that situation as well, when Bitcoin pumped and you sold it all and you only kept a little bit. Obviously, this FOMC meeting about 3 minutes away. We will try play the conference live for everyone. G'day to everyone in the chat there. But let us know if that's been you in the past, or have you been holding on strong since you first got into it? Have you been reading the books?
My purpose is to have enough to play with and experiment with, but not to make money on. And 2 times it's gone way up and made money. And just recently, I think Bitcoin is going to go to 100,000 to the number.
That's pretty interesting. Hey, Steve Wozniak, co-founder of Apple. I do think Bitcoin is going to go to 100,000. Very chill and interesting, hey? So James again from Bloomberg, TLDR, I think Canton Fitzgerald CEO just said they hold $90 billion worth of treasuries for Tether in a live interview on CNBC. That's a very, very interesting. I don't know if there's a Freudian slip or they're putting it out there and there's programming and propaganda. And is this why Tether's been allowed to survive? Because they are the only buyer of US treasuries at the moment. there. What are your thoughts on that one? Pretty interesting, though, that Canton Fitzgerald says he holds 90 bill worth of US Treasuries. Nothing groundbreaking here, James, again, but 4 different issuers have met with the SEC regarding their Bitcoin ETF filings in the last few days. BlackRock met with them yesterday for the 3rd time in as many weeks, while Grayscale, Franklin, and Fidelity each had meetings last week. So do we get the spot Bitcoin ETF? Is this going to happen early 2024? If that lines up with the US presidential election, rate cuts, I think there's another one from James as well. They are expected to pull them down by 75 basis points next year as well, down to, I think, 4.26. We'll watch the meeting when it goes live there very shortly. It should be up there in about 1 minute's time if they are on time there. The Fed will see how punctual they are today. But if that happens, and we've got the halving, all these ETFs coming out, it's going to be an interesting time. Does that mean we're going to go straight up until the halving, then after the halving for the next 6, 12, 18 months? Probably not. It looks like we've gone live here. They haven't brought out Jerome. As soon as they do, I will put the music on there. But it looks like it's going to be an interesting time. Simon, I fear I can't reach one whole Bitcoin before this gets away from me. Not advice, definitely not advice, but what I'd say is just do the best you can, and you never know what's possible. If you have a purpose, a goal, your intentions are clear, do the best. I surprised myself over the last few years, and I guess that goes back to my point. Are we going to keep going up? Is it going to be a Santa Claus rally? Are we just going to keep pumping? Well, we're at 44, and then we drop down to the high 40,200, I believe, this week. So there are these opportunities where the market presents itself. If you've got a purpose, you don't get shaken out. You enjoy the red days. We'll see. So here he is. Let's see what they have to say, hey?
Good afternoon. My colleagues and I remain squarely focused on our dual mandate to promote maximum employment and stable prices for the American people. As we approach the end of the year, it's natural to look back on the progress that has been made toward our dual mandate objectives. Inflation has eased from its highs, and this has come without a significant increase in unemployment. That's very good news. But inflation is still too high. Ongoing progress in bringing it down is not assured, and the path forward is uncertain. As we look ahead to next year, I want to assure the American people
Smash the like, share this video, and get it out while we're live.
Inflation to our 2% goal. Restoring price stability is essential to achieve a sustained period of strong labor market conditions that benefit all. Since early last year, the FOMC has significantly tightened the stance of monetary policy. We've raised our policy interest rate by 5.25 percentage points and have continued to reduce our securities holdings at a brisk pace. Our actions have moved our policy rate well into restrictive territory, meaning that tight policy is putting downward pressure on economic activity and inflation, and the full effects of our tightening likely have not yet been felt. Today, we decided to leave our policy interest rate unchanged and to continue to reduce our securities holdings. Given how far we have come, along with the uncertainties and risks that we face, the committee is proceeding carefully. We will make decisions about the extent of any additional policy firming and how long policy will remain restrictive based on the totality of the incoming data, the evolving outlook, and the balance of risks. I will have more to say about monetary policy after briefly reviewing economic developments. Recent indicators suggest that growth of economic activity has slowed substantially from the outsized pace seen in the third quarter. Even so, GDP is on track to expand around 2.5% for the year as a whole, bolstered by strong consumer demand as well as improving supply conditions. After picking up somewhat over the summer, activity in the housing sector has flattened out and remains well below the levels of a year ago, largely reflecting higher mortgage rates. Higher interest rates also appear to be weighing on business fixed investment. In our summary of economic projections, committee participants revised up their assessments of GDP growth this year, but expect growth to cool, with the median projection falling to 1.4% next year. The labor market remains tight, but supply and demand conditions continue to come into better balance. Over the past 3 months, payroll job gains averaged 204,000 jobs per month, a strong pace that is nevertheless below that seen earlier in the year. The unemployment rate remains low at 3.7%. Strong job creation has been accompanied by an increase in the supply of workers. The labor force participation rate has moved up since last year, particularly for individuals aged 25 to 54 years, and immigration has returned to pre-pandemic levels. Nominal wage growth appears to be easing, and job vacancies have declined. Although the jobs to workers gap has narrowed, labor demand still exceeds the supply of available workers. FOMC participants expect the rebalancing in the labor market to continue, easing upward pressures on inflation. The median unemployment rate projection in the SEP rises somewhat.
Just to keep you informed, Bitcoin's gone up about $150 in the last few minutes. We'll keep playing.
From 3.8% at the end of this year to 4.1% at the end of next year. Inflation has eased over the past year, but remains above our longer run goal of 2%.
No
Based
shit.
on the Consumer Price Index and other data, we estimate that total PCE prices rose 2.6% over the 12 months ending in November, and that, excluding the volatile food and energy categories, core PCE prices rose 3.1%. The lower inflation readings over the past several months are welcome, but we will need to see further evidence to build confidence that inflation is moving down sustainably toward our goal. Longer-term inflation expectations appear to remain well anchored, as reflected in a broad range of surveys of households, businesses, and forecasters, as well as measures from financial markets. As is evident from the SEP, we anticipate that the process of getting inflation all the way to 2% will take some time. The median projection in the SEP is 2.8% this year, falls to 2.4% next year, and reaches 2% in 2026. The Fed's
Wow,
monetary
a little bit
policy
longer
actions
than what
are
they
guided
thought.
by our mandate to promote maximum employment and stable prices for the American people.
You make it all up
My
anyway,
colleagues
mate.
and I are acutely aware that high inflation imposes significant hardship as it erodes
Really?
purchasing power, especially for those least able to meet the higher costs of essentials like food, housing, and transportation. We're highly attentive to the risks that high inflation poses to both sides of our mandate, and we are strongly committed to returning inflation to our 2% objective. As I noted earlier, since early last year,
I'll just show you this
we have
really
raised
quickly.
our policy rate by
Let me, I'll keep playing
5.25%.
it, but I'll just mute him. Bitcoin is now at 42,547. When we started this stream here, we were back at like 42,350, I think. So nearly $300. It is looking good long term. The words coming out of his mouth, obviously a whole lot of propaganda. We'll go back to Papa Powell and see what he has to say.
Process of significantly reducing our securities holdings. While we believe that our policy rate is likely at or near its peak for this tightening cycle,
Nice.
the economy has surprised forecasters in many ways
Huge
since
pump.
the pandemic.
Huge pump.
And ongoing progress
42,693.
ongoing progress toward
69.
our 2% inflation objective is not assured. We are prepared to tighten policy further if appropriate. We're committed to
They
achieving
won't.
a
I don't
stance of
think so.
monetary policy that is sufficiently restrictive to bring inflation sustainably down to
42,724.
2% over time, and to keeping policy restrictive until we're confident that inflation is on a path to that objective. In our SEP, FOMC participants wrote down their individual assessments of an appropriate path for the federal funds rate based on what each participant judges to be the most likely scenario going forward.
Rate cuts.
While participants do not view it as likely to be appropriate to raise interest rates further, neither do they want to take the possibility off the table. If the economy evolves as projected, the median participant projects that the
Wow.
appropriate level of the federal funds rate will be 4.6% at the end of 2024, 3.6% at the end of 2025, and 2.9% at the end of 2026, still above the median longer-term rate. These projections are not a committee decision or plan if the economy does not evolve as projected.
I wouldn't pay too much attention when we're looking out 24, 25, 26 towards the later part, because they will more than likely have to start printing money as well, which is going to bring inflation back up again. They'll wait till after the US presidential election
We'll
there.
continue to make our decisions meeting by meeting based on the totality of the incoming data and their implications for the outlook for economic activity and inflation, as well as the balance of risks. In determining the extent of any additional policy firming that may be appropriate to return inflation to 2% over time, the committee will take into account the cumulative tightening of monetary policy, the lags with which monetary policy affects economic activity and inflation, and economic and financial developments. We remain committed to bringing inflation back down to our 2% goal and to keeping longer-term inflation expectations well anchored. Restoring price stability is essential to set the stage for achieving maximum employment and stable prices over the longer run. To conclude, we understand that our actions affect communities, families, and businesses across the country. Everything we do is in service to our public mission. We at the Fed will do everything we can to achieve our maximum employment and price stability goals. Thank you. I look forward to your questions.
How interesting, hey?
Thank you. Chris Rugaber.
Let us know if you want to hear the questions there while they're asking. I find it quite interesting what they have to say. Long term, it doesn't matter for Bitcoin at all. You can see we are up here, 42,810. This is on the 1 minute chart. Drive you crazy looking at these type of things, but just for a little bit of fun, we will keep monitoring it there. Let us know if you want to hear questions. All right, we'll bring it back up. Hit the like and the share button. Let's get this out while we are live.
Firming that may be appropriate, so any additional policy firming, that sentence. So we added the word any as an acknowledgement that we believe that we are likely at or near the peak rate for this cycle. Participants didn't write down additional hikes that we believe are likely, so that's what we wrote down. But participants also didn't want to take the possibility of further hikes off the table. So that's really
42,900.
The microphone, sorry. Steve Leisman, CNBC. Happy holidays, Mr. Chairman. Fed Governor Chris Waller said that if inflation continues to fall, then the Fed in the next several months could be cutting interest rates. I wonder if you could comment on whether you agree with Fed Governor Waller on that the Fed would become more restrictive if it didn't cut rates if inflation fell. Thank you, sir.
So, of course, I don't comment on any other officials, even those who work at the Fed. But I'll try to answer your question more broadly. So the way we're looking at it is really this. When we started out, right, we said the first question is how fast to move, and we moved very fast. The second question is, really how high to raise the policy rate. And that's really the question that we're still on.
How high? Send it, Papa.
We're very focused on that. As I mentioned, people generally think that we're at or near that.
Big dip, 42,780.
That we will hike, although they don't take that possibility off the table. So that's when you get to that question, and that's your answer. There's a naturally it begins to be the next question, which is when it will become appropriate to begin dialing back the amount of policy restraint that's in place. So that's really the next question, and that's what people are thinking about and talking about. And I would just say this: we are seeing strong growth that appears to be moderating. We're seeing a labor market that is coming back into balance by so many measures, and we're seeing inflation making real progress. These are the things we've been wanting to see. We can't know. We still have a ways to go. No one is declaring victory. That would be premature. And we can't be guaranteed of this progress. So we're moving carefully in making that assessment of whether we need to do more or not. That's really the question that we're on. But of course, the other question, the question of when will it become appropriate to begin dialing back the amount of policy restraint in place, that begins to come into view. And is clearly a topic of discussion out in the world, and also a discussion for us at our meeting today.
Can you give some color as to the nature of that discussion today? Thank you.
Sure. So it comes up in this way today. Everybody wrote down an SEP forecast, so many people mentioned what their rate forecast was. There was no back and forth, no attempt to sort of reach agreement, like this is what I wrote down, this is what I think, that kind of thing. And a preliminary kind of a discussion like that. Not everybody did that, but many people did. And then And I would say there's a general expectation that this will be a topic for us looking ahead. That's really what happened in today's meeting. I can't do the head count for you in real time, but that's generally what happened today.
Go to Rachel.
Really?
Hi, Chair Powell. Rachel Siegel from the Washington Post. Thanks for taking our questions. At this point, can you confidently say that the economy has avoided a recession and isn't heading for one now? And if the answer is no, I'm curious about what you'd still be looking for.
I think you can say that there's little basis for thinking that the economy is in a recession now. I would say that. I think there's always a probability that there will be a recession in the next year, and it's a meaningful probability no matter what the economy is doing. So it's always a real possibility. The question is it? So it's a possibility here. I have always felt since the beginning that there was a possibility, because of the unusual situation, that the economy could cool off in a way that enabled inflation to come down without the kind of large job losses that have often been associated with high inflation and tightening cycles. So far, that's what we're seeing. That's what many forecasters on and off the committee are seeing. This result is not guaranteed. It is far too early to declare victory. And there are certainly risks. It's certainly possible that the economy will behave in an unexpected way. It has done that repeatedly through in the post-pandemic period. Nonetheless, where we are is we see the things that I mentioned.
I'm curious if you're looking back on the past year, you talked about navigating by the stars under cloudy skies. Can you talk about some of the ways in which the economy surprised you most this year, where you thought it would behave in one way and had to pivot to respond?
What's the Fed?
So I think forecasters generally, if you go back a year, were very broadly forecasting a recession for this year, for 2023. And not only did that not happen, that includes Fed forecasters and really essentially all forecasters, a very high proportion of forecasters were expecting very weak growth or a recession. Not only did that not happen, we actually had a very strong year. And that was a combination of strong demand, but also real gains on the supply side. So this was the year when labor force participation picked up, where immigration picked up, where the distortions to supply and demand from the pandemic, the shortages and the
from the
bottlenecks
Fed
really began to unwind. So we had significant supply side gains with strong demand, and we got what looks like a 2.5% plus, or a little more than that, growth year at a time when potential growth this year might even have been higher than that, just because of the healing on the supply side. So that was a surprise to just about everybody. I think the inflation forecast is roughly what people wrote down a year ago, but in a very different setting. And I would say the labor market, because of the stronger growth, has also been significantly better. If you look back at the SEP from a year ago, there was a significant increase in unemployment. That didn't really happen. We're still at 3.7%. So we've seen strong growth, still a tight labor market, but one that's coming back into balance with support from the supply side, a greater supply of labor. It's that's what we see, and that I think that combination was not anticipated broadly.
Thanks, Howard Schneider with Reuters, and thanks for taking the questions. I wonder if you could give a little more color or detail on what motivates the lower rates next year. Whether it's a coincidence, for example, that the spread between PCE inflation, core inflation, and the federal funds rate stays constant over the year. Are you simply calibrating against the fall in prices, in the price level that you're in the rate of inflation that you're expecting, as opposed to supporting the economy?
Nothing quite that mechanical is happening. The SEP really is a bottoms up, built from the bottom up, right? So I think people are looking at what's happening in the economy, and I think if you look at the big difference from September in the SEP, the expectations for inflation this year, both headline and core, have come down, really significantly in 3 months. That's a big piece of this. At the same time, growth turned out to be very strong in the third quarter, is slowing, we believe, as appropriate. And we've had several labor market reports which suggest, again, significant progress toward greater balance across a broad range of indicators. You're seeing the so many of the indicators coming back to normal, not all of them. But so I think that people look at that and they write down they basically each individual writes down a forecast and a rate forecast that goes with that forecast. We tabulate them and publish it. And so it's not, it isn't, you ask about real rates, I take it, that is something that we're very conscious of and aware of and monitor, and it's certainly a big part of, it's a part of how we think about things, but really it's broader financial conditions that matter, and as you well know, it's so hard to know exactly, what the real rate is or exactly how tight policy is at any given time. So you couldn't
It's your
follow
job,
that
bro.
like it was a rule and think that you would get the right answer all the time. But
Okay,
it's certainly
then.
something that we're focused on. And indeed, if you look at the projections, I think the expectation would be that the real rate is declining as we move forward.
It sounds like
Hopes
the
and dreams,
discussion, or
brother.
that could follow up, has already kind of begun. I'm wondering, just related to Steve's question, how the tactics of this play out, given the slowing of inflation and the fact that the deeper you get into 2024, the closer you get to a presidential election. Do you want to front load this, in other words?
Pump it.
Yeah, no, we don't think about political events. We don't think about politics. We think about what's the right thing to do
Rubbish.
for the economy. The minute we start
Rubbish.
thinking about those things,
Send it, pal.
we just can't do that. We have to think, what's the right thing? We'll do the things that we think are right for the economy at the time when we think is the right time. That's what we'll always do. So I mentioned we're moving carefully. One of the things we're moving carefully about is that decision over, that assessment really over whether we've done enough, really. And you see that people are not writing down rate hikes. That's us thinking that we have done enough, but not feeling that really strongly, confidently, and not wanting to take the possibility of a rate hike off the table. Nonetheless, it's not the base case anymore, obviously, as it was.
Sorry, pal.
60, 90 days ago. So that's how we're approaching things. And as I mentioned, we wrote down this SEP, and it talks about people have individual assessments of when it will be appropriate to start to dial back on the tight policy we have
When
in
the
place.
stars
And
align.
That's a discussion we'll be having going forward, but that's another assessment that we're going to make very carefully. So as time goes forward.
Thank you. What a guy, hey. Bitcoin's down to 42,690 there, so it is starting to get
Tim
very
Rose, Wall Street
volatile.
Journal. Chair Powell, you've argued over the last year that policy tightening started before you actually lifted off because the market anticipated your moves and tightened on your behalf. The market is now easing policy on your behalf by anticipating a funds rate by next September that's a full point below the current level, with cuts beginning around March. Is this something that you are broadly comfortable with?
So this last year has been remarkable for the sort of seesaw thing back and forth we've had over the course of the year, of markets moving away and moving back and that kind of thing. So, and what I would just say is that we focus on what we have to do and how we need to use our tools to achieve our goals, and that's what we really focus on. And people are going to have different forecasts about the economy, and those are going to show up in market conditions, or they won't. But in any case, we have to do what we think is right. And in the long run, it's important that financial conditions become aligned or are aligned with what we're trying to accomplish. And in the long run, they will be, of course, because we will
The comments are worth
do what
listening
it takes to
to.
get to our
Reading.
goals. And ultimately, that will mean that financial conditions will come along. But in the meantime, there can be back and forth, and I'm just focused on what's the right thing for us to do, and my colleagues are focused on that too.
For the Fed.
Markets seem to think inflation is coming down credibly. Do you believe we're at the point where inflation is coming down credibly?
Listen, I welcome the progress. I think it's really good to see the progress that we're making. I think if you look at the 12-month measure, look at the 6-month measures, you see very low numbers. If you look at 12-month measures, you're still well above 2%. You're actually above 3% on core through November at PCE. That isn't to say I'm not calling into question the progress. It's great. We just need to see more. We need to see continued further progress toward getting back to 2%.
We'll get a little tip with
That's
these
what we need
words.
to see. So, it's our
Spiking.
job to restore price stability, and that it's one of our two
Okay.
jobs, along with maximum employment, and they're equal. So we're very focused on doing that. As I mentioned, we're moving carefully at this point. We're pleased with the progress, but we see the need for further progress. And I think it's fair to say there is a lot of uncertainty about going forward. We've seen the economy move in surprising directions, so we're just going to need to see more further progress.
Gina.
Gina Smilik, New York Times. Thanks for taking our questions. In the SEP from today, growth is notably below potential in 2024. If growth were to surprise us again in the way that it has for years now by being stronger than expected next year, would it still be possible to cut rates? Or put another way, is below trend growth necessary to cut rates, or would continued progress on inflation alone be sufficient?
So we'll look at the totality of the data. Growth is one thing. So is inflation, so is labor market data. So we'd look at the total, as we make decisions about policy changes going forward, we're going to look at all those things, and particularly about as they affect the outlook. It's ultimately all about the outlook and the balance of risks as well. So that's what we'd be looking for. If we have stronger growth, that'll be good for people. That'll be good for the labor market. It might actually mean that it takes a little longer to get inflation down to 2%. We will get it down to 2%. But if we see stronger growth, we will set policy according to what we actually see. And
what a sinister system, hey?
So that's how I would answer.
I guess the question I'm asking, if you don't mind a quick follow-up, I guess the question I'm asking is above trend growth itself a problem?
It's only a problem it's not itself a problem. It's only a problem insofar as it makes it more difficult for us to achieve our goals. And if you have growth that's robust, what that will mean is probably we'll keep the labor market very strong. It probably will place some upward pressure on inflation. That could mean that it takes longer to get to 2% inflation. That could mean we need to keep rates higher for longer. It could even mean ultimately that we would need to hike again. It just is. It's the way our policy works.
Go to Neil.
Hi, Chair Powell. Neil Irwin with Axios. How do you interpret the state of the labor market right now? And in particular, you've referred even today to evidence that it's coming into better balance. What would you need to see to conclude that it has reached that balance?
Good question.
So on the better balance side, just a lot of things. It's you see job growth still strong, but moving back down to more sustainable levels given population growth and labor force participation. The things that are not quite, but let me go on with that list. Claims are low. If you look at surveys of businesses, they're sort of the era of this frantic labor shortage are behind us, and they're seeing a shortage of labor as being significantly alleviated. If you look at shortages of workers, whereas they thought job availability was the highest it had ever been or close to it, that's now down to more normal levels by so many measures: participation, unemployment, so many measures, the unemployment, job openings, quits, all of those things. So wages are still running a bit above what would be consistent with 2% inflation over a long period of time. They've been gradually cooling off, but if wages are running around 4%, that's still a bit above, I would say. And I guess there are just a couple of other, the unemployment rate is very, very low. And these are, but I would just say overall, the development of the labor market has been very positive. It's been a good time for workers to find jobs and get solid wage increases.
Claire.
He doesn't even believe his own words.
Jones, Financial Times.
Nice voice.
Yeah, I'd say the mood among economists at the moment seems to be one of cautious optimism, which is somewhat corroborated by your forecast, by this sense that we are going to have a soft landing. Yeah, when we hear from the general public, there's a lot of discord about economic conditions. What do you think explains this disconnect, and does it matter for policymakers?
It may be. A common theme is that while inflation is coming down, and that's very good news, the price level is not coming down. Prices of some goods and services are coming down, but overall, in the aggregate, the price level is not good. So people are still living with high prices, and that's that's not, that is something that people don't like. And, you know, what will happen with that is
People,
wages
not
are
power.
now, real wages are now positive, so that wages are now moving up more than inflation as inflation comes down. And so that, that might help improve the mood of people.
The
But
lies,
we do see
blatant
those, we see
lies.
those public opinion surveys. The thing that we can do is to do our jobs, which is to use our tools to foster price stability, which has such great benefits over such long periods of time, and which is the thing that really enables us to work for and achieve an extended period of high employment, which is so beneficial for, you know, families and companies around the country.
Victoria?
It's all a farce, hey?
Hi, Victoria Guido with Politico. I wanted to ask, you know, on the flip side of if things start to deteriorate rapidly, if we do fall into a recession, if we do start to see unemployment rise at sort of the levels of inflation that we're seeing now, how would you all think about that in terms of rate cuts? Would that be a sign that you've done your job demand-wise?
Sorry, if
the economy looks like it's starting to fall into recession, if the jobless rate starts to rise.
Let's see.
that's not something we're hoping to see. Obviously, we're hoping to see something
The
very
stars
different,
align.
which is continuation of what we have seen, which is the labor market coming into better balance without a significant increase in unemployment, inflation coming down without a significant increase in unemployment, and growth moderating without a significant increase in unemployment. That's what we're trying very much to achieve, and not something we're looking to see.
But would you take that as a signal that you should cut rates?
Obviously, what we'll do is we'll look at the totality of the data, as I've mentioned a couple of times,
Totalitarian.
and certainly the labor data would be important in that. And if you can describe a situation like that where if there were the beginning of a recession or something like that, then yes, that would certainly weigh heavily in that decision.
Michael McKee from Bloomberg Television and Radio. Mr. Chairman, you were, by your own admission, behind the curve in starting to raise rates to fight inflation. And you said earlier, again, the full effects of our tightening cycle have not yet been felt. How will you decide when to cut rates, and how will you ensure you're not behind the curve there?
So we're aware of the risk that we would hang on too long. We know that that's a risk, and we're very focused on not making that mistake. And we do regard the two, we've come back into a better balance between the risk of overdoing it and the risk of underdoing it. Not only that, we were able to focus hard on the price stability mandate, and we're getting back to the point where, which is what you do when you're very far from one of the two mandates. You're getting now back to the point where both mandates are important, and they're more in balance too. So I think we'll be.
In regards to Dana Steele, in one word, it's a distortion.
With demand, and what we see the same thing other people see, which is a strong economy, which really put up quite a performance in 2023. We see good evidence and good reason to believe that growth will come in lower next year.
Simon.
And you see what the forecasts are. I think the median growth, median participant wrote down 1.4% growth, but we'll have to see. It's very hard to predict. We'll also be looking to see progress on inflation and the labor market remaining strong, but ideally without seeing the kind of large increase in unemployment that happens sometimes.
When you begin the cutting cycle, will it be essentially run the same way you do it now with raising rates, where you basically do trial and error cut and see what happens, or will you tie it to some particular measure of progress?
We haven't typically tried to articulate, with one exception, really specific target levels, which was, some of you will remember the thresholds that we used in, 2013. The answer is, these are things that we haven't, really worked out yet. We're sort of just at the beginning of that discussion.
Duct tape in super glue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Edward Lawrence with Fox Business. So if the Fed cuts rates, as the dot plot is showing, about 75 basis points, does that signal or that there's a belief of weakness next year in the economy?
It wouldn't, if that were, first of all, let me just say, that isn't a plan. That's just accumulating what people wrote down. So that's not something, you know this, but allow me to say it again. We don't debate or discuss what the right, whose SEP is right. We just say what they are and we tabulate them and publish them. So it's, it's important for people to know that, but it wouldn't need to
Doesn't
be
mean
a sign
shit.
of, it could just be a sign that the economy is normalizing and it doesn't need the tight policy. It depends
the
on
Fed.
the economy can evolve in many different ways, right? So, but it could be more what I just described.
And you focused on core inflation. We've heard from in other meetings. How sticky is core inflation right now?
Well, that's what we're finding out, and we've seen real progress in core inflation. It has been sticky, and famously, the service sector is thought to be stickier. But we've actually seen reasonable progress in non-housing services, which was the area where you would expect to see less progress. We are seeing some progress there, though. And in fact, all three of the categories of core are now contributing. Goods, housing services, non-housing services, they're all contributing at different levels, meeting by meeting, or rather report by report. So, yeah.
Okay, let's go to Katerina.
So, yeah.
Katerina Saraiva, Bloomberg News. Thanks for taking our questions. I just wanted to
Real
ask a
pleasure,
little
I'm sure.
bit about, we had some pretty positive data this morning and yesterday. I'm assuming those were not incorporated into the forecast.
We'll make
we
this the
see
last
today.
question.
But I just wanted to ask, how that kind of adds to your thinking, on the inflation outlook.
Right. So we got CPI the morning of the first day, and we got PPI the next day, which informs the translation into PCE. So it's very, very late in the game, but nonetheless, participants are allowed to, encouraged to update their SEP forecasts until probably mid-morning today. After that, so staff has to accumulate all of that and create the documents that you see. So until about mid-morning, a little maybe late morning, it's okay to update. And I believe some people did update their forecasts based on what we saw today.
Okay, and you see, how are you, when you think about, starting to think about the rate cuts next year or whenever they come, how do you, how do you think about the economy we're in now, kind of post-pandemic? Do you think that there's been significant structural shifts, and is that going to change how you look at a rate cut path?
We'll pause it there. No, they're just looking at bringing in CBDCs. Obviously, Elizabeth Warren there is on the warpath in regards to CBDCs. I guess the biggest takeaway for me is this is all posturing. It's all the farce, everything. They say whatever they want. The market all gets excited. You can see we're at 42,850 now. So we have had a pretty big spike up from 42,300 roughly when we started the stream. I wonder if the block clock no, it's updated in the background, unfortunately, there. Would have been nice to see the original price. Maybe this one is a little bit slow. Yeah, 42,378 is where we started the stream. So it is going up on the news. It is positive long term. Maybe we do get a Santa Claus rally. The point that I was making, and I guess I'm starting to talk like Jerome Powell, it feels like listening to that has made me a little bit dumber. It rotted my brain just slightly, just a little bit. It's difficult to listen to the lies, the misinformation, the propaganda, the misdirection, the misspeak, just the blatant disrespect for the human population. We do have the answer, and that is Bitcoin. Obviously, if you're here now, you understand that. If you don't understand how Bitcoin fixes this, the broken money supply that is happening, read the books, Bitcoin Evangelism, B is for Bitcoin. If you've read those books, then go into the Bitcoin standard, the fiat standard, broken money, continue your education, because it is going to get a whole lot worse. Inflation, even though they're saying it's around 3% and a bit, really, even in the comments here, we're saying some things in the grocery store are up 80 to 100% as well. Inflation, they just change the basket and what they measure. So the market data is presented how they want to be able to promote their agenda. They're not playing over the next couple of months, but they are playing towards the 2030 agenda where you will own nothing and be happy. I know that's a little bit scary to be able to take into account. It is what it is. They don't want you to be well off, and I guess we need to play their game. We need to own the world's hardest assets. What are the world's hardest assets? The hardest asset is Bitcoin. There are things like gold, silver, real estate, fine art, fine wine. But the best one for you to do is just to be able to stack and chill. If you can get to one Bitcoin, get to one Bitcoin. If you get to that, go past it. Obviously not financial advice. Just study Bitcoin and you do you. But you want to be able to protect your friends and family. Inflation, the real rate inflation is probably more like, 17 to 15%, depending on where you are in the world. Over here, we're still feeling it. And groceries have not gone up 3%. They've, what used to cost us 250 is now costing us about 420. Yes, that's a meme number there, but that's pretty close to about true here. Our electricity's gone up as well. So let us know if you are feeling that. You have blown up the chat there. If we vibe, hit subscribe and just stack and chill. It is going to be a green day. It is going to get very choppy. I'll bring this one up here. 42,000. Let me refresh it. So it was 42,378. It is good. CoinGecko, it's a shitcoin casino webpage, but it does show the total market cap of everything there, 1.65 trillion. And the reason why I keep bringing this up is because it shows if new money is starting to come in, and we are seeing new money, fresh capital starting to flow slowly in. Today, let's refresh it now. 42,378 will hit, and 42,824, up 4%. We should have it open. I'll go into it and just get the 24-hour high, 24-hour low for everyone there. 24-hour low, look at that, 40,712 would have been a good stacking opportunity. 42,843, is that a good stacking opportunity? In my opinion, yes, you do you. I'll do me. Over time, long enough time period, however they manipulate the data, however they manipulate fiat, they will start printing more money. And Bitcoin over time is going to go up and up and up. If you have a look at the Argentine peso versus the Bitcoin, you can see what happens when it starts to go towards hyperinflation territory, if not hyperinflation there. But gas is back down to $3.10. I mean, I wonder where it started at. Croc, all I know is it's all I hear whenever I'm out and about in the stores and talking to neighbours. Everyone is completely broken, outraged at the pump until absolutely everything's costing more, you're getting less, and they're saying wages up. That's not a good thing. Unemployment, they want to see more unemployment to bring inflation down. It's so sinister, their plot, to be able to do it, and I think that does tie into the World Economic Forum and the other three-letter agencies there. So truly get the information out there, read the books, and I say read the books, read the bugs, and people think I'm being a little bit sinister or mean. Get as much information into you as you can to be able to get your conviction, and then just store it, put it on, steal your seed phrase, whether it's this seed or link in the description, whatever you use. Don't store your generational wealth on paper. That would be crazy. Obviously, Elizabeth Warren is trying to outlaw Bitcoin, especially in the US. The reason why I care is because I love the US so much. You can see, I'm flying the flag loud and proud. Waiting for some other flags to arrive, but the whole world basically looks up to the US, and if they can start it there, they can start it anywhere. What we're seeing in with the MiCA laws as well, we have freedom. It's here right now. Truly make the most of it, because the time is ticking. And once the CTF comes out, and if Warren, she hasn't been successful in implementing a bill, but if she is, this time it's really not good for your freedom. They'll have to print safe pensions and 401ks too. In Australia here, they are trying to dip into the retirement superannuation funds, use it for military spend, for whatever they want. So, with 401ks, the Roth IRA, Roth IRAs or whatever they are, you know, I've no idea. I live here in Australia, but whatever your pension fund is, you can put Bitcoin, you can use that money to buy Bitcoin. Talk to a proper financial advisor in regards to that. We've got an opportunity to be able to protect ourselves. If you're holding fiat, you know, it is inflating away. It's just the US dollar's the slowest one out of all of them. As an American Democrat, Elizabeth Warren is insane, 100% agree. And ladies and gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure. Somebody asked me yesterday, I should put a donate button. If you're inclined to donate in any way, just pay it forward to someone in need. As a lot of you know, so many people are struggling at the pump, at the till. So just do a kind favor or help someone out there. And we'll see you tomorrow. Be blessed. Peace. Take it easy. Just stack and chill. Everything they say, don't worry about it. Follow your game plan and look out 5-10 years. Everything is going to be all right. Next year is going to be absolutely insane. Be blessed.